Today we're going to be looking at Overtone in pink for brown hair. So first thing you may notice is that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. These are human hair swatches, but the number 4 is going to be the only swatch that is virgin hair. The rest have been chemically colored, treated, or bleached at some point in their existences. 1 is green. I usually get requests when I do purple and pink hair dyes to do it over a green swatch, so we'll see how that turns out. 2 is a cool toned gray. 3 is kind of a natural-ish red. 4 is black, and then 4 through 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So what I'm going to do is I will take the dye directly from the container and I'll just apply it to the top of each swatch. Then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I'll do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. I'm just popping in quickly to say that I don't know what happened, but it seems as though I somehow didn't record me applying the color to the hair, so instead I'm just going to use a picture for anyone who enjoys watching me apply the color. I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, plus different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly maybe turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're going to do a 4:1 ratio, so that will be 1 part of the color to 4 parts diluter. If you're unsure what a diluter is, my simple answer I usually give is that it lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Now usually each brand will sell their own version of a diluter so you can keep the same consistency if that makes you feel more comfortable. But to keep things fair between all of my videos, I just use a plain white conditioner as my diluter. So I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours so they have time to really just absorb the color. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. So I do like to just warn when doing these videos that even though the color is taking to the more brown swatches, that my swatches again are not virgin hair. Virgin hair usually struggles a little bit more to absorb and hold on to semi-permanent colors. So even if your hair does take a color, there is a chance for some people that it might not stay in. Now considering this one is meant for brown hair, my hope is that it would stay in. So if anybody has used this, feel free in the comments to tell everyone your experience with using this over your hair, especially if your hair was dark and especially if it was virgin hair as well. So 1 was originally green. This is a color that often does happen when I put a pink over a green. It usually kind of almost turns not quite purple, but it definitely starts to lean more in that angle. So it's much darker than the rest of the swatches, a lot more kind of muted, and maybe a little bit more cool tone too, since it is leaning a little purple. And I'd say it covered on both the bottom and the top. 2 is the cool tone gray. I do feel like the cool tones underneath kind of did sway the color a bit because it also is a lot more cool toned compared to the blonder swatches. I wouldn't quite say it's a purple, but definitely not as warm as these, and a little bit darker and muted as well. 3 was the natural red. I do see a difference on both the top and the bottom. The bottom is a little bit harder to tell. It leans a little bit more natural red than the top, but I can still see a little bit of pink coming through. So I'd say the bottom kind of enhanced some of the warm tones in the natural red, whereas the top I think is pretty pink looking in comparison. Usually it kind of turns out similar to something between 6 and 7, which I'd say is true. 6 is similar, where I do see a little bit of pink coming through on the bottom, but it still looks kind of brown, so it's almost like a brown with a really pink undertone. And then on the top of number 6, a lot more pink comes through. 7 took a little bit better on the diluted section, but I'd say the bottom does have a slight naturally brown look to it as well, but definitely still very pink. And then the top definitely took the pink. Going back to number 4, that one was the very pure jet black. I don't see a difference on that, and that one was also virgin hair. 5 was a very dark brown. Now there may be a difference in the natural light when I go do the before and afters. Currently I don't know if I see a difference. If I see a difference, it might look a little bit darker than I remember it looking, but under this particular lighting it still just looks like a dark brown. I do plan on doing the before and after tomorrow. Today it is raining. I don't know if it's gonna be raining tomorrow. If not, I will try to take a picture in the natural sunlight, but if there's no sunlight photo, that means there was no sun for me to take pictures in. So I'd say it looks the most pink starting on 7 and upward, but number 6 definitely is a good contender because it still looks fairly pink compared to like number 5. And then as the swatches get lighter, it gets less and less muted and a lot brighter, with number 11, the Platinum Blonde, being the brightest. Number 12 was Toned. That one kind of has a similar vibe to like 9 and 10, where it's a little bit darker, but it does lean a little bit more cool tone, which I think pertains to the swatch being toned beforehand, so it didn't have as many warm undertones in it to begin with. Overall, this pink leans a little bit more on the warm side, I'd say. So as for comparisons, I will say this is slightly more unique to my collection. I couldn't find any perfectly similar colors to this, which is kind of cool, but I feel like this shade of pink isn't hard to find necessarily. So if I do any in the future that are similar, I will definitely compare those. As of right now, I'll start with my most similar comparison, and that's actually going to be Colourpop in the color Raspberry. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So that was one thing I was noticing with this shade of pink in particular, is that it actually leans a little bit lighter than a lot of my other pinks with the similar undertone. A lot of my pinks like this are darker. And looking at the Colourpop diluted section, the Colourpop looks like it might be just a hair more cool toned as well. So if you're looking for something that's even more cool toned than this, I would say the Arctic Fox Virgin Pink would probably be next in line, but that one's definitely not as dark. It's a lot brighter of a pink. But I will say these shades of pink usually are a little bit better for darker hair, and you can see even on the Colourpop one it did take. So I'll link that video down below so you can see how that turns out on the darker swatches if you're considering either of these. The other comparison I wanted to look at today is Directions in the color Cerise. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and 9. So with the Cerise, I felt like the undertone was a little bit more similar because it leaned a little bit more warm compared to the Colourpop, but obviously on the top half, on the direct dye portion, it's a little bit darker, but also the Cerise is extremely bright when you dilute it. The Overtone definitely has a slightly more natural look in comparison, but the Cerise also seemed to be quite pigmented from what I remember. So again, I will also link that video down below if you are curious about it at all. So now I would like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.